She texted you good morning before you even woke up. Every single day, he told you that you were his soulmate. On the second date, they knew exactly what you needed to hear, exactly when you needed to hear it. It felt like magic. It wasn't magic. It was reconnaissance. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm settling in today to talk about something that almost every single person I've worked with who's escaped narcissistic abuse has said to me, usually with this bewildered look on their face. But in the beginning, it was perfect. They were perfect. We were perfect. What happened? What happened is that the beginning wasn't real, or rather, it was real for you. But for them, they were conducting an audition, and you got the part. I've been doing this work for over 25 years, and I want to talk to you today about love bombing, what it actually is, why it works so devastatingly well, and most importantly, how to tell the difference between someone who's genuinely excited about you and someone who's building a cage out of compliments. Because here's what breaks my heart. The same qualities that make you vulnerable to love bombing, your capacity for deep connection, your optimism, your ability to trust, your generous heart, those aren't weaknesses. They're not character flaws. They're beautiful parts of being human. The problem isn't you. The problem is that someone saw those qualities and decided to exploit them. When love feels like drowning in the best possible way. Let me tell you about Aisha. She was 34 when she came to see me, 2 years into a marriage that was unraveling in ways she couldn't articulate. But she didn't want to talk about the present. She wanted to talk about the beginning. We met at a work conference, she said. I was giving a presentation on sustainable architecture. That's my field, and afterward, he came up to me. His name was Trevor. He said my presentation changed how he saw urban design. He asked if we could get coffee, talk more about my ideas. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into walking around the city until 2 in the morning, talking about everything. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their scars. He told me about his ex-wife, Aisha said, how she'd been cruel to him, dismissive of his emotions, how he'd never met anyone who really understood him until me. He said I saw him in a way no one else ever had. By the third date, Trevor told Aisha he was falling in love with her. By the second week, he'd introduced her to his mother. By the first month, he was talking about their future children's names. I remember my best friend saying it seemed fast, Aisha told me, but I genuinely thought that this is what real love feels like. Overwhelming, all-consuming, like you've known each other forever. She paused, looked at me with tears in her eyes. When does intense become too intense? How are you supposed to know? That's the question, isn't it? Because our culture celebrates this intensity. We make movies about it. We write songs about it. Love at first sight. Meant to be. Swept off your feet. We're taught that overwhelming passion is the gold standard of romance. But here's what I've learned, sitting with hundreds of people who've been through this. Real love doesn't need to move at the speed of light. Real love can afford to take its time, because real love isn't afraid that if it slows down, you'll see through it. The neuroscience of why it works. Let me get a little clinical for a moment, because understanding what's happening in your brain during love bombing helps you forgive yourself for falling for it. When someone showers you with attention, affection, gifts, grand gestures, your brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. It's the same neurochemical cocktail that makes cocaine addictive. I'm not being hyperbolic. The brain scans look similar. You're getting hit with this overwhelming sense of euphoria, connection, and reward. And if that person is skilled at love bombing, and narcissists often are because they've had a lifetime of practice, they're also creating a sense of uniqueness. They're making you feel like this connection is once in a lifetime, cosmically special, not like anything either of you has experienced before. Your logical brain, your prefrontal cortex that's supposed to assess risk and make rational decisions, it goes offline. You're operating purely from your limbic system, your emotional reward-seeking brain. And here's the insidious part. If someone is mirroring you perfectly, reflecting back everything you've ever wanted to hear, validating parts of yourself you didn't even know needed validation, your brain interprets that as safety, as being truly seen and understood. But it's not safety, it's a performance, and your brain can't tell the difference, not at first. The architecture of the performance. I worked with a man named Kenneth. He was 67 when he came to therapy, which tells you this doesn't discriminate by age. Kenneth was a widower. His wife of 40 years had passed away from cancer, and after 3 years of grieving, his daughter had convinced him to try one of those dating websites for seniors. He matched with a woman named Lorraine. She was 62, a retired teacher, and she seemed lovely. Thoughtful messages, appropriate pacing. They met for lunch at a quiet restaurant. She asked me about my wife, Kenneth told me. Really asked. Wanted to know what she was like, what I missed about her. She didn't try to change the subject or get uncomfortable. She just listened. Over the next few weeks, Lorraine became increasingly attentive. She'd send him articles about things he'd mentioned being interested in, Civil War history, birdwatching, a specific type of jazz. She'd check in when she knew he had a doctor's appointment. She remembered the names of his grandchildren. I felt like I'd been given a second chance, Kenneth said. At my age, I didn't think I'd ever feel that kind of connection again. 3 months in, Lorraine started having financial problems. Medical bills from a procedure her insurance wouldn't cover, a problem with her pension, her car broke down. Kenneth, generous and in love, helped. Of course he helped. By the time Kenneth came to see me, brought in by that same concerned daughter, he'd given Lorraine over $60,000. And the attentiveness had vanished the moment she got what she needed. But here's what Kenneth kept saying to me, session after session. She knew things about me that I'd never told anyone. She understood me. How could someone who understood me that well be lying? That's the thing about love bombing. It's not that they understand you. It's that they're excellent at collecting data and playing it back to you. They're learning your language, your triggers, your wounds, your dreams, and then they're using that information to create a version of themselves that's perfectly calibrated to what you need. Trevor knew Aisha needed someone who respected her intellect and her career, so he became fascinated by her work. Lorraine knew Kenneth needed someone who honored his grief and his history, so she became that respectful, patient listener. They're not being vulnerable with you, they're gathering intelligence. The telltale signs you probably missed. Here's where I want to get practical, because I know some of you are thinking about someone right now, someone new, someone who's making you feel incredible, and you're wondering, is this love bombing, or is this just someone who's really into me? Let me give you some questions to ask yourself. Is the intensity proportional to how well you actually know each other? A 20-year-old client of mine, Jasmine, met someone on campus. Within a week, he was writing her poetry, leaving notes on her car, showing up at her classes to walk her to the next one. He told her she was his future wife. But we'd only been on 3 dates, she told me later. He didn't actually know me. He knew a version of me he'd decided I was. Real connection builds. It doesn't arrive fully formed. Are they moving the relationship forward at a pace that makes you uncomfortable, but you're afraid to slow down because you don't want to lose them? This is key. Love bombing often comes with this subtle pressure, not overt, not aggressive, just this sense that if you don't match their intensity, you'll ruin something magical. Trevor would say things to Aisha like, "I've never felt this way before. I don't want to waste time with someone I know I want to spend my life with, unless..." Do you not feel the same way? It wasn't a threat, but it felt like one. Like she had to keep up or lose him. Are they making you the center of their entire world almost immediately? This sounds romantic. It's not. It's unsustainable and it's unhealthy. Lorraine started calling Kenneth multiple times a day. She wanted to know what he was doing, who he was with, what he was thinking. She'd get hurt if he didn't respond quickly enough. She said she just loved talking to me, Kenneth explained. I thought it meant she really cared. What it meant was she was establishing control, making herself indispensable, creating a dynamic where he felt guilty for having a life outside of her attention. Do they have an explanation for every red flag that makes you the problem for noticing it? Aisha mentioned to Trevor that she felt things were moving fast. He said, I thought you were different. I thought you were brave enough for real love. My ex said the same thing, and that's why we failed. See what he did there? He reframed her reasonable boundary as a character flaw and compared her to an ex who hurt him. Suddenly, Aisha wasn't protecting herself. She was on the verge of becoming another person who failed him. Are they mirroring you a little too perfectly? We all want to be with someone who shares our interests. But when someone likes everything you like, values everything you value, wants everything you want, exactly as you want it, that's not compatibility. That's camouflage. Jasmine's new boyfriend suddenly loved all the same music she did, read all the same books, had the same political views, the same religious beliefs, the same opinion on whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I thought we were perfect for each other, she said. But then one day I realized I don't know what he actually likes. I don't know who he is when I'm not around. Because there wasn't a him when she wasn't around. There was only the version of himself he was performing for her benefit. What real connection actually looks like. I want to take a moment here to talk about what healthy, genuine interest looks like, because I think we've gotten so confused about this. I have a client, I'll call her May, who started dating someone after a long, terrible relationship with a narcissist. She was terrified. Every kind gesture made her anxious. Every compliment made her suspicious. He brought me flowers on our third date, she told me, and I almost ended it. I thought, here we go again. But here's what was different. When May told him she needed to take things slowly, he said, okay, what does slowly mean to you? Help me understand your pace. When she couldn't see him for a week because of work deadlines, he said, that sounds stressful. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you when you're free. When she shared something vulnerable about her past, he said, thank you for trusting me with that. Not, we're so connected, I've never felt this close to anyone. He had his own friends, his own hobbies, his own life. He was interested in her joining parts of it, but he wasn't asking her to become it. It felt boring compared to what I was used to, May said. No fireworks, no intensity, but I also felt safe, like I could breathe. That's what real looks like. It doesn't take your breath away because it's suffocating you. It lets you breathe deeper than you have in a long time. Real connection doesn't need to speed run through emotional intimacy. It can be patient. It can wait for trust to build naturally. It doesn't need to manufacture crisis or intensity to keep you hooked. Real connection is fine with you having boundaries, with you keeping parts of your life separate, with you needing time to think about things. Real connection doesn't make you feel like you're on a runaway train. It feels like two people walking in the same direction at a pace you both agree on, with the freedom to stop and rest when needed. The crash after the bombing. Here's what nobody tells you about love bombing. It doesn't last. It can't last. No one can maintain that level of performance indefinitely. For Aisha, the shift happened around the 6-month mark. Trevor started making small comments about her appearance, about her friends being too demanding of her time, about her work events cutting into their time. The elaborate gestures stopped. The attentiveness evaporated. I thought I'd done something wrong, she said. I thought I'd gotten comfortable and stopped appreciating him enough. No, what happened was he'd successfully hooked her. He didn't need to perform anymore. The mask could start to slip. For Kenneth, Lorraine's warmth disappeared the moment her financial emergency was resolved with his money. Suddenly she was busy, unavailable. The texts became sporadic. When he expressed concern, she accused him of being controlling. But I'd just been doing what she'd taught me to do, he said, confused. She'd wanted constant contact. She'd initiated all of it. Yes, because during love bombing, they set the standard. They train you to expect that level of intensity, and then they withdraw it, leaving you desperately trying to get back to how things were. That withdrawal? That's not the end of the love bombing phase. That's the point of it. The love bombing was never about loving you. It was about creating a baseline of intensity that they could use as leverage. Now, when they give you breadcrumbs of that original attention, you're grateful. You work harder. You accept less. You blame yourself for the change. And that's when the real abuse begins. What it means for your healing. If you're recognizing yourself in these stories, if you're realizing that the perfect beginning you had wasn't real, I need you to know something. You didn't fall in love with a person, you fell in love with a performance, and you can't grieve a performance the way you grieve a person because it never existed. That's a strange kind of grief. You're mourning something that was never real, but your feelings were real. Your hope was real. Your investment was real. The future you imagined was real to you. And here's what makes it even more complicated. There probably were real moments. Moments where maybe they forgot to perform. Moments where something genuine slipped through. Those moments will haunt you. You'll hold on to them as evidence that the real them is the person you fell in love with. But a few real moments don't make a real relationship. And those glimpses weren't the truth about who they are. They were exceptions to their performance. Jasmine, the 20-year-old, said something in one of our last sessions that stuck with me. I keep thinking if I'd just been better, smarter, prettier, maybe he wouldn't have changed. But then I realized he didn't change. I just finally saw who he'd been all along. The change was me waking up. That's it. That's the realization that lets you start healing. They didn't become someone else. They stopped pretending to be someone they never were. The gift of recognizing it. Here's what I want you to take from this. Learning to spot love bombing isn't about becoming cynical. It's not about building walls or never trusting anyone again. It's about developing discernment. It's about understanding that real love is patient enough to let you keep your boundaries, confident enough to let you keep your own life, secure enough to move at a pace that feels comfortable for both of you. It's about knowing that someone who truly values you will want you to maintain your friendships, your independence, your sense of self, not absorb yourself into their world entirely. It's about recognizing that intensity isn't the same thing as intimacy. Urgency isn't the same thing as importance. Someone needing you desperately isn't the same thing as someone loving you healthily. May, the woman who was scared of the flowers, called me 6 months after our last session. She wanted to let me know that the man she'd been afraid to trust had become her partner. They'd moved in together. It's still not fireworks, she said, but it's steady, it's safe. And you know what? That feels more romantic than anything I've ever experienced, because I know it's real. That's what's on the other side of recognizing love bombing, the ability to recognize real love when it shows up. Without the performance, without the intensity, without the urgency, just two people who like each other, learning each other at a pace that doesn't leave you breathless from trying to keep up. That's not boring, that's revolutionary. If this resonated with you, I want you to know, the fact that you fell for love bombing doesn't make you naive. It makes you human. It makes you someone with a big heart who wants to believe in connection. Don't let them take that from you. Learn to protect it, yes. Learn to be more cautious, absolutely. But don't let them convince you that your capacity for love was the problem. Their capacity for deception was the problem. You're not broken for having believed them. They're broken for having lied. Take care of yourselves, trust yourselves, and give yourselves permission to take things slow with the next person who seems too good to be true. I'll see you in the next one.